The first night Harry arrived at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. He didn't feel lucky. He didn't feel special. Everyone else looked around the great hall with wide eyes full of wonder. The floating candles, the endless ceiling filled with stars. The longhouse tables crowded with cheering students. It should have felt like a dream. But to Harry, it felt like walking into a trap. All his life, people had lied to him. The Dursleys lied about his parents. They lied about who he was. Then Hagrid came crashing into that little hut on the rock and told him he was a wizard. Just like that. No proof. Just words. Now this old headmaster with half-moon glasses and calm blue eyes smiled at him as if he had been waiting his whole life for him. It didn't sit right with Harry during the sorting. The hat whispered things into his mind that made his stomach twist. "You are not as simple as they think," it murmured. "You question. You doubt. You don't trust easily." Harry didn't want to trust easily. Trust had only brought him pain before. When he was sorted into Gryffindor, the table exploded with cheers. He forced a smile. Across the hall, he noticed a tall, dark-haired professor staring at him with cold, unreadable eyes. Severus Snape did not clap. He did not smile. He just watched, and for some strange reason, Harry felt that Snape's stare was more honest than Dumbledore's warm welcome. In the first week of classes, Harry began to notice small things. Teachers whispering when he walked by. Students pointing at his scar. Dumbledore watching him carefully during meals, like a man studying a chessboard. It was as if everyone already knew a game was being played, and Harry was the most important piece. One evening, he couldn't sleep. The curtains around his bed felt suffocating. He slipped out quietly and wandered through the castle corridors. The stone walls felt alive with secrets. That was when he heard voices drifting from a half-open door. He knew he shouldn't listen, but he did. Too early, a familiar calm voice said, "He must not know yet." It was Dumbledore. Harry's heart began to pound. Another voice answered, sharp and low. "You are raising him like a pig for slaughter." Harry froze. Pig for slaughter. There was a long silence. Then Dumbledore spoke again, softer now. "It is the only way." Harry didn't wait to hear more. He stepped back, but his foot scraped against the stone. The voices stopped. Footsteps approached the door. Harry ran. He didn't stop until he reached the Gryffindor common room. His chest burned. His hands trembled. He didn't understand everything, but he understood enough. He was part of some plan. A plan he didn't agree to. The next day, he watched Dumbledore differently. The headmaster gave a gentle speech at breakfast about unity and courage. The students clapped. Harry felt sick. That night, he made a decision that would change everything. If they were playing a game, he would not be their pawn. He began spending more time in the library, not just for homework, but for answers. He searched for information about dark magic, about old prophecies, about powerful wizards who were said to have defied fate. He didn't tell Ron. He didn't tell Hermione. This was something he had to understand alone. One afternoon, while researching, he felt someone sit across from him. He looked up slowly. "Snape," double quotes curious reading for a first year. Snape said quietly, his black eyes scanning the open book about magical soul bonds and ancient curses. Harry swallowed, but didn't look away. "I like to know what's going on." Snape studied him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he leaned closer. "If you are wise," Snape whispered, "you will learn that not all light is good. And not all darkness is evil." It wasn't comfort. It wasn't kindness. But it felt real. Harry started noticing things after that. Doors that opened when he whispered certain words. Restricted books that seemed to fall open to specific pages. It was as if the castle itself wanted him to see the truth, and the truth was simple. Dumbledore knew more about his scar than he was. Saying Dumbledore knew more about the dark wizard who killed his parents, and worst of all, Dumbledore was waiting for something to happen to him. One night, Harry stood before the Mirror of Erised. He had discovered it by accident. In the reflection, he didn't see his parents this time. Instead, he saw himself standing beside a shadowed figure, powerful, unafraid. No one watching him like a weapon. The reflection smiled. Behind him, a soft voice echoed in the empty room. Fascinating, isn't it? Harry didn't turn around immediately. He already knew who it was. Dumbledore stepped closer, his robes whispering across the floor. The mirror shows the deepest desire of our hearts. Harry finally faced him. Does it show the truth? Dumbledore's eyes flickered, just for a second. It shows what we long for. Harry held his gaze. And what do you long for, Professor? For the first time, the old man did not answer right away. In that silence, Harry understood something important. Dumbledore was afraid, and if the most powerful wizard in the world was afraid, then maybe he had a reason to be. Harry made his choice that night. He would not wait to be sacrificed. He would not follow blindly. Dumbledore had a plan for him. Harry would make his own plan first, and if that meant betrayal, then so be it. Harry did not sleep that night. He lay in his four-poster bed inside Gryffindor Tower, staring up at the dark red canopy while the soft breathing of the other boys filled the room. Ron turned over once, mumbling something about Quidditch, completely unaware that the world around them was shifting. Harry felt different now. The castle no longer seemed magical in a warm way. It felt watchful, calculating, like it was waiting to see what he would do next. The words he had overheard kept repeating in his head. Pig for slaughter. It is the only way. He didn't know the full meaning, but he knew enough. Adults always believed children wouldn't understand that they could hide dangerous truths behind gentle smiles. Harry had lived with lies before. He recognized the taste of them. The next morning at breakfast in the Great Hall of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Hogwarts, School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. He studied Albus Dumbledore carefully. The headmaster laughed kindly at something Professor McGonagall said. He looked peaceful, almost grandfatherly. The other students trusted him without question. Even the teachers seemed to orbit around him like planets around the sun. That kind of power wasn't accidental. It was built, controlled, directed. Harry wondered how long Dumbledore had been preparing for him. In potions class later that day, Severus Snape moved between the desks like a dark shadow. His voice was sharp as ever, criticizing Neville's potion and ignoring Hermione's raised hand. But when he passed Harry's cauldron, he paused, just for a second. Their eyes met. Snape didn't smile. He didn't nod, but something passed between them. Understanding after class. As the other students rushed out, Snape's cold voice stopped him. "Potter, stay." Ron shot him a worried look, but left anyway. The dungeon felt heavier once they were alone. Snape circled him slowly. "Tell me, Potter," he said softly, "have you ever considered that fame can be manufactured?" Harry kept his face calm. "I didn't ask to be famous." "No," Snape replied, "but others may have asked it for you." The words settled like stones in Harry's stomach. Snape wasn't confirming anything directly. He was planting seeds, and Harry was ready to let them grow. That night, instead of returning to the common room after dinner, Harry slipped away again. He had begun mapping the castle in his mind, which staircases moved at what times, which corridors stayed empty after curfew. He was learning, watching, preparing. He found himself outside the forbidden corridor on the third floor, the one everyone was warned about during the first feast. Most first years would have been too scared to even stand near it. But fear felt different to Harry now. It felt useful. He whispered the unlocking charm Hermione had practiced earlier that week. The door creaked open. The three-headed dog inside growled low, massive heads lifting. Harry's heart pounded, but he didn't run. He studied the creature carefully, guarding something. Something important enough to risk students. Stumbling upon it, something connected to him. He backed away slowly and closed the door. His mind was racing. Whatever was hidden down there, Dumbledore wanted it protected. And if Dumbledore wanted it protected, then it was part of the larger game. Over the next few weeks, Harry changed in small ways that only careful eyes might notice. He laughed less loudly. He asked more questions in defense against the dark arts. He stayed behind after lessons. Listening to Professor Quirrell Quirinus. Quirrell stuttered nervously about dark wizards. There was something weak about Quirrell, something fearful. But fear could be manipulated. Harry began testing people. Small eyes. Small secrets. He told Ron he thought Snape was trying to protect something. He told Hermione he suspected someone else entirely. He watched who reacted strongly. Who defended Dumbledore without thinking. Who hesitated. Trust was becoming a currency, and Harry was spending it carefully. One evening, he received a note delivered by an unfamiliar owl. It was short. Midnight. The unused classroom near the East Tower. Come alone. There was no signature. He almost didn't go. But curiosity was stronger than caution. The classroom was dark, except for a single floating candle. And standing near the window, robes blending with shadow, was Snape. "You deserve many things," Snape replied softly. But the wizarding world rarely gives what is deserved. For the first time in his life, Harry felt like he wasn't being spoken to like a child. Snape wasn't comforting him. He wasn't pretending everything would be fine. He was simply acknowledging the darkness, and that honesty was dangerous. "So what do you want from me?" Harry asked. Snape studied him carefully. "I want to know," he said, "whether you intend to follow Dumbledore blindly. Or think for yourself." Harry didn't hesitate. "I'll never be anyone's pawn." Something unreadable passed over Snape's face. Approval, maybe. Or calculation. "Then you must be prepared," Snape said quietly. "Because the moment you step off Dumbledore's path, you will be walking alone." Harry thought of the mirror. Of the shadowed figure standing beside him. Of power without strings. "I've always been alone," he replied. And in that moment, the first real crack formed in the trust between the boy who lived and the greatest wizard alive. The betrayal had not happened yet, but it had begun. The days that followed felt strangely normal on the outside. Classes continued, homework piled up, and the castle buzzed with gossip about Quidditch tryouts and upcoming exams. But inside Harry's mind, nothing was normal anymore. Every smile from Albus Dumbledore felt rehearsed. Every encouraging word sounded like part of a script written long before Harry ever stepped into Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Harry had started noticing how often Dumbledore watched him. Not openly, not in a suspicious way. But there were moments during meals when Harry would glance up and find those calm blue eyes already resting on him, thoughtful and distant. It was not the look of a caring grandfather. It was the look of someone measuring time. The forbidden corridor stayed on his mind. Whatever was hidden beneath that three-headed dog was important. And if Dumbledore was guarding it so heavily, it had to connect to the dark wizard who killed his parents. Lord Voldemort. Lord Voldemort was a name whispered with fear, but Harry had begun to think differently. If Voldemort was truly gone, why protect something so desperately? And if he wasn't gone, then why wasn't anyone telling him the truth? Harry decided he needed answers that no professor would willingly give. Late one evening, he slipped into the restricted section of the library, using the invisibility cloak. The air felt thicker there, older. The books seemed to breathe with secrets. He ran his fingers along dusty spines until one title caught his attention: Ancient Magical Artifacts Tied to Immortality and Forbidden Power. His heart pounded as he flipped through brittle pages filled with warnings about objects that could anchor up. Sold to the living world, the idea terrified him. But it also explained something. Why would Dumbledore guard an object so fiercely? Not to keep it safe for himself, but to keep it safe from someone. Or to lure someone. Footsteps echoed softly in the distance. Harry quickly shut the book and froze. For a second, he feared it was Dumbledore. But instead, a familiar dark figure stepped into view. Severus Snape. Severus Snape did not look surprised to see him. "You are either incredibly brave," Snape said quietly, "or incredibly foolish." "Maybe both," Harry replied. Snape's eyes flicked to the book in Harry's hands. He didn't scold him. He didn't threaten detention. Instead, he lowered his voice. "You are searching for something specific." Harry hesitated, then decided to take the risk. "Is there something in this castle connected to Voldemort?" Snape did not flinch at the name. That alone told Harry more than any answer could. Most people reacted with fear. Snape reacted with calculation. "There are always remnants of dark wizards," Snape said carefully. "Power leaves scars. Some visible, some hidden. Is that what's under the dog?" Harry asked directly. Snape's silence confirmed it. Harry swallowed. Is Dumbledore using it as bait? The question lingered in the air between them like a dangerous spell. Snape did not answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than Harry had ever heard it. "Dumbledore believes in controlling outcomes. He prefers to guide events rather than react to them, even if it risks students." Harry pressed, "Especially if it serves a larger purpose." Those words settled heavily in Harry's chest. A larger purpose. That was always the excuse adults used when they decided children were expendable. As the weeks passed, Harry's thoughts grew darker. He started wondering if Dumbledore had placed him with the Dursleys deliberately, knowing the neglect would shape him into someone desperate for belonging, someone easy to steer. It felt cruel. It felt planned. Ron and Hermione noticed he was distant. Ron tried to pull him into wizard chess matches, laughing loudly and complaining about homework. Hermione kept reminding him about assignments and upcoming tests. Harry appreciated them, but he didn't confide in them. If he was right, if Dumbledore truly had a long-term plan that involved sacrifice, then the fewer people who knew his doubts, the better. One night, as rain lashed against the castle windows, Harry stood again before the forbidden corridor. This time, he didn't hesitate. He brought a flute he had borrowed earlier that day. When he unlocked the door, the massive three-headed dog snarled, but Harry began to play a soft, simple tune. The creature's growls faded into slow breathing as it collapsed into sleep. Harry stared at the trapdoor beneath it. His hands trembled. This was the moment. If he stepped through, there was no turning back. He lifted the door and climbed down. What followed was a series of protections, clearly designed by powerful minds. Enchanted plants that tightened like ropes. Flying keys that sliced through the air. A life-size chessboard that demanded strategy and sacrifice. As he moved forward alone, Harry realized something chilling. These obstacles weren't impossible for first years. They were difficult. Yes. Dangerous, but not impossible. It was as if someone wanted a student to reach the end. Breathing heavily, Harry stepped into the final chamber. At the center stood the Mirror of Erised, and in front of it, trembling slightly, was Professor Quirrell. Quirrell turned, eyes wide with shock. "Why you?" Harry felt something shift inside him. This was it. The truth was standing right in front of him. But instead of fear, he felt clarity. If Dumbledore expected him to protect the stone, to play the hero, to unknowingly fulfill some greater design, then maybe it was time to change the script. Maybe it was time to choose differently. And for the first time, Harry allowed himself to consider a thought that would have terrified the entire wizarding world. What if the enemy of his enemy was not truly his enemy? He stepped closer to Quirrell, not as a frightened child, but as someone ready to rewrite his fate. Quirrell stared at Harry as if he were seeing a ghost. The candlelight in the chamber flickered against the stone walls, making the shadows twist and stretch. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The Mirror of Erised stood silently between them, reflecting more than either of them wanted to admit. Harry noticed how pale Quirrell looked, how his hands trembled, not just with fear, but with desperation. "You shouldn't be here," Quirrell whispered. Though there was no real strength in his voice, Harry stepped closer instead of backing away. "I could say the same thing," he replied calmly. Quirrell's eyes darted toward the mirror. "The stone. It's here. I know it is, but I cannot see it." Harry understood immediately. The protections weren't just physical. The mirror was the final test. He remembered what Dumbledore had said about it, showing the deepest desire of the heart. If Quirrell desired the stone for power, he would never see it directly. Dumbledore had designed this carefully. Carefully, that word echoed in Harry's mind. Everything about this trap felt intentional. The challenges, the mirror, even the timing. It was almost as if Dumbledore had expected someone to try and steal it, and expected Harry to follow. "You don't want it for yourself, do you?" Quirrell asked suddenly, studying Harry's face. "You're different from the others. I can see that." Harry didn't answer right away. He looked into the mirror instead. This time, he didn't see his parents. He saw himself holding a small red stone in his hand. But what struck him wasn't the stone, was the expression on his own face. Calm, confident, not confused, not manipulated. He felt something shift in his pocket. Slowly, carefully, he reached inside. His fingers closed around something small and solid. The Sorcerer's Stone. It had appeared in his pocket. Because he had desired to find it, but not to use it. Not exactly. He desired control. Control over his own fate. Quirrell saw the movement. His breathing became uneven. "You have it," he whispered. Harry didn't deny it. That was when the room changed. A cold presence filled the air, heavy and suffocating. Quirrell's body stiffened unnaturally. His voice, when it came again, was no longer his own. "Harry Potter." The sound was thin and sharp, like metal scraping against stone. Harry felt the scar on his forehead burn. From the back of Quirrell's head, hidden beneath his turban, a face began to reveal itself. Pale, snake-like eyes glowing with hatred and hunger. "Lord Voldemort, Lord Voldemort." Fear tried to rise inside Harry, but he forced it down. This was the monster who had taken his parents. The name that made grown witches and wizards tremble. And yet, right now, Voldemort looked weak, parasitic, dependent. "You have your mother's eyes," Voldemort hissed softly. "And your father's foolish courage." Harry tightened his grip on the stone inside his pocket. "You're not as powerful as everyone says," he replied quietly. A flash of anger crossed the twisted face. "Power is patient. Power waits." Harry's mind raced. Dumbledore had expected him to fight, to resist, to burn Quirrell with the protection left by his mother's sacrifice. That was the story being written for him. The brave child defending the stone, the loyal pawn proving himself. But what if he didn't follow the script? "What do you want?" Harry asked instead. There was a pause. Voldemort had not expected negotiation. I want what was stolen from me, Voldemort said coldly. Life, power, my rightful place. And if I gave you the stone? Harry asked. Quirrell's body trembled violently. The air grew colder. You would betray Dumbledore. Voldemort whispered, almost curious. Harry thought of the whispered words he had overheard. Pig for slaughter. It is the only way. He thought of the years with the Dursleys, of secrets kept from him for his own good. I don't belong to him, Harry said firmly. I never agreed to be part of his plan. Voldemort studied him with intense, burning eyes. You are young, angry. That can be shaped. I'm not joining you, Harry said quickly. But I'm not protecting him either. This wasn't loyalty to darkness. It was defiance against control. Voldemort seemed to consider this carefully. Then perhaps we have an understanding. Give me the stone, and I will leave this place. Dumbledore will lose his precious weapon. And you. His voice softened dangerously. You will no longer be his obedient hero. The offer hung in the air. Harry knew giving the stone to Voldemort was dangerous, maybe even catastrophic. But keeping it meant playing the role chosen for him. Either way, someone powerful would rise. The difference was choice. For the first time in his life, the choice was his. Without another word, Harry pulled the stone from his pocket. The red surface glowed faintly in the dim chamber light. Quirrell gasped. Voldemort's eyes widened with hunger. Harry stepped forward slowly. This doesn't mean I trust you, he said quietly. Voldemort's thin smile stretched unnaturally. Trust is irrelevant. Harry placed the stone into Quirrell's shaking hands. The moment it left his fingers, something changed in the room. A surge of dark energy pulsed outward like a shockwave. The mirror cracked. The torches flickered violently, and far above them, in his office, Albus Dumbledore suddenly looked up, because the plan he had carefully built for years had just been shattered. The moment the Sorcerer's Stone left Harry's hand, the air inside the chamber felt like it had been ripped apart. A violent surge of magic burst outward, knocking Harry backward onto the cold stone floor. The cracked surface of the Mirror of Erised splintered further, thin fractures racing across the glass like lightning. Quirrell screamed, but the voice that echoed with it was not fully his own. It was sharper now, stronger, no longer thin and fading. Lord Voldemort was feeding on the stone's power. Harry shielded his eyes as a blinding red light filled the room. He felt his scar burn hotter than ever before, like a brand pressed into his skin. But beneath the pain, there was something else. Not fear, not regret. It was certainty. Whatever happened next, it was his decision. No one had pushed him into it. No one had guided his hand. Quirrell's body convulsed violently as dark energy wrapped around him like smoke. The weak, stuttering professor seemed to disappear under the flood of magic. When the light finally dimmed, Quirrell was standing straighter. His trembling had stopped. The air around him felt heavier, more controlled. It is done, Voldemort's voice whispered, stronger now. Echoing unnaturally in the chamber, Harry slowly pushed himself to his feet. He didn't know exactly what had changed, but he could feel it. The fragile, parasitic presence Voldemort had before was stabilizing. Not fully restored, but no longer helpless. Footsteps thundered above them. Dumbledore was coming. You should leave, Harry said quickly. Quirrell's body turned toward him. The snake-like face on the back of his head studied Harry with new intensity. You surprise me, Harry Potter, Voldemort said softly. You are not what he believed you to be. I'm not what anyone believes, Harry replied. For a brief second, something almost like respect flickered in those red eyes. Then Quirrell staggered slightly. Even with the stone, the body could not hold the surge of magic for long. "This form is temporary," Voldemort hissed. "But I will not forget this." Before Harry could respond, the chamber door above burst open with a deafening crack. Albus Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore descended rapidly, robes swirling, blue eyes blazing with power. The calm, grandfatherly look was gone. In its place stood the most feared wizard of the age, his gaze locked onto Quirrell instantly. "No," Dumbledore said quietly, but the word carried enormous force. What followed was not a simple duel. It was a collision of magic so powerful that the walls themselves seemed to shake. Spells flashed like bolts of lightning, red and gold colliding with deep green and black. Harry stumbled backward, shielding himself from the shockwaves. Voldemort, still bound to Quirrell's fragile body, fought with desperate fury. But even with the stone's energy, he was not yet whole. Dumbledore's magic was precise, controlled, relentless. The chamber began to crumble around them. Harry realized something important in that chaos. Dumbledore wasn't just fighting Voldemort. He was fighting to regain control of the story. The stone had been bait. Harry had been bait. And now the trap had snapped in an unexpected direction, with a final blinding explosion of light. Quirrell's body collapsed. A dark, shadowy form tore free from it, shrieking in rage before, shooting upward through the broken ceiling and vanishing into the night. Silence fell heavily over the ruined chamber. Quirrell lay motionless on the floor. Dumbledore stood still, breathing hard but composed. Slowly, his eyes turned toward Harry. "There was no warmth in them now, Harry," he said quietly. Harry met his gaze without flinching. The burning in his scar was fading. "You knew he would come," Harry said first. Dumbledore did not deny it. "You expected me to stop him." Harry continued, "I trusted that you would make the right choice." Dumbledore replied carefully. Harry almost laughed at that. The right choice for who? The question hung in the broken air between them. Dumbledore stepped closer, studying him deeply, as if trying to see inside his thoughts. "You do not fully understand the consequences of what you've done." "Maybe not," Harry admitted. "But at least it was my decision." For the first time, Dumbledore looked older than Harry had ever seen him. Not weaker, but burdened. The careful plan he had crafted since the night Harry's parents died had just fractured. The boy he intended to guide was no longer predictable. "You have accelerated events," Dumbledore said softly. "Voldemort is stronger tonight than he was yesterday. And whose fault is that?" Harry shot back. "You hid the stone here. You've built the trap." Dumbledore did not respond immediately. In that silence, Harry understood something that changed everything. Dumbledore wasn't angry because Voldemort had escaped. He was unsettled because Harry had stepped outside his control. "I will not be shaped into a weapon," Harry said firmly. Dumbledore's voice, when it came, was calm again but colder. "Be careful, Harry. Independence can be mistaken for recklessness." "Maybe," Harry replied. "Or maybe it's the first honest thing I've done." Far above them, the castle remained unaware of how deeply the future had shifted. Students slept peacefully, thinking the year would end with house points and summer holidays, but nothing was the same. Any more Voldemort was no longer fading in the shadows. Dumbledore no longer had full control of the board, and Harry Potter had just chosen his own side, not light, not darkness, but himself. The official story spread through Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry by the next morning. Professor Quirrell had tragically died while attempting to protect the Sorcerer's Stone from a dark force. The stone itself, students were told, had been destroyed to prevent it from ever falling into the wrong hands. The staff spoke in calm, careful tones. The house tables buzzed with rumors, half-truths, and wild guesses. Most students believed what they were told. Harry did not. He sat quietly at the Gryffindor table, while Ron talked excitedly about how close the school must have come to disaster. Hermione kept analyzing how brilliant Dumbledore must have been to plan everything so wisely. Harry listened, but said very little. The truth felt heavy in his chest, too dangerous to share. He knew the stone had not been destroyed before Voldemort touched it. He knew Dumbledore had arrived too late to stop that. And he knew the dark presence that escaped the castle had been stronger than before. Across the hall, Albus Dumbledore watched the students with his usual composed expression. But whenever his eyes met Harry's, something unspoken passed between them. It wasn't hatred. It wasn't open distrust. It was distance, a silent understanding that the simple relationship of mentor and student had ended before it ever truly began. In the days that followed, security around the castle tightened. Teachers whispered more often. The Ministry of Magic made quiet visits. No one said Voldemort's name openly, but the fear had returned to the wizarding world like a cold wind slipping under a door. Harry felt it in the way owls arrived with urgent letters, in the way professors paused before answering certain questions. Something had shifted far beyond the castle walls. One evening, as the term neared its end, Harry found himself alone in Dumbledore's office. He had not been summoned. He had chosen to come. The gargoyle had stepped aside after he spoke the password, as if the castle itself recognized that he no longer walked blindly. Dumbledore stood by the window, hands folded behind his back. The setting sun painted the room in deep golden shadow. "You wished to speak with me," Dumbledore said gently without turning. "No," Harry replied. "I think we just need to understand each other." Dumbledore turned then, studying him carefully. "Very well." Harry took a steady breath. "You placed the stone here, knowing Voldemort would try to take it. You knew I would get involved. You trusted that I would act exactly the way you hoped." "I believed in your character," Dumbledore said calmly. "You believed you could shape it." Harry corrected. For a moment, silence filled the circular office. Fawkes the Phoenix shifted softly on his perch. The delicate instruments on the shelves ticked and hummed. Dumbledore did not deny it. "The world is not simple, Harry. Sometimes leaders must make difficult choices for the greater good." Harry shook his head slightly. "That's what scares me. The greater good always seems to cost someone else their freedom." Dumbledore's eyes softened, but there was no apology in them. "And what will you choose, Harry? If not guidance, then what?" "My own path," Harry answered without hesitation. There was something steady in his voice now. Not anger. Not rebellion for the sake of it. Just certainty. Dumbledore nodded slowly. "Then I hope you are prepared for the consequences." "I already am," Harry said quietly. When he left the office, he did not feel small. He did not feel like a child walking away from a powerful headmaster. He felt like someone who had stepped into a wider world, dangerous, uncertain, but finally honest. The school year ended with cheers and applause as house points were awarded. Gryffindor still celebrated. Students packed their trunks and laughed about summer plans. Life appeared to return to normal, but outside the castle, in forests and forgotten ruins, something was rebuilding. Lord Voldemort was no longer a fading whisper. He had tasted the stone's power. He had felt Harry's defiance, and he would not forget either. On the Hogwarts Express, Ron and Hermione chatted beside him, unaware of how deeply things had changed. Harry watched the countryside roll past the window, green hills blurring into the distance. He knew the coming years would not follow the simple story everyone expected. He would not be the obedient hero shaped by careful hands. He would not stand quietly in someone else's plan. He had betrayed Dumbledore in year one, not out of loyalty to darkness, not out of hunger for power, but because he refused to be sacrificed for a future he did not choose. And somewhere far away, Two of the most powerful wizards alive were now preparing for a very different war, one where Harry Potter belonged to neither side. The boy who was meant to be a pawn had stepped off the board, and the game would never be the same again.